The idea that originated with the Repeal Coalition was that we noticed that at that time the debate around immigration had two poles, and the poles were, kick everybody out, gather 11 million people and kick them all out of the United States was one side of the debate, and the other side of this debate, no, let them in for a little bit of time, exploit their labor, and then kick them out, right? So that was the debate that was being had. And we were trying to think, well, that's obviously not the right poles of this particular debate, and we wanted to expand the debate and create a third pole, meaning expand the debate for the full range. And what we tried to do was to make the biggest possible claim that we could possibly think of, and what we do is, say, kick everybody out, and the debate should be between kicking everybody out and letting absolutely everybody in, right? That should be the terms of the debate, not this little narrow thing that the debate was having. So we came up with the slogan of live, love, and work wherever you please. That the Repeal Coalition fights to live, love, and to fight for the rights of everybody to live, love, and work wherever you damn please, like my friend Taryn has put it before. And that's where we start. That's our starting point. That's the non-negotiable point of where we start. We also started with the notion that we need to repeal all the anti-immigration laws. This happened way before, again, 1070, because there's a ton of other laws that are in place and many that are coming. So we said we're fighting to repeal them all, right? Not one, not two, all of them. Anything else? Our strategy is to work with the grassroots. At the most basic level of the grassroots, as close to the ground as possible, with the people that are being the most affected, and to work from that location upward. That's been our strategy, and I'm not going to say much more other than that we started with a petition, with door knock, we talked to people, gathered people into a community, and it took us a long time to bring a group of people, about 30 or 40 solid people that come regular to our meetings. Our meetings can grow to like 80, 90, but then they kind of go back to 30 or 40 depending on the situation. I think that I'm not going to say much more than that. I'm happy to talk in the group about that if we need to. But the things that I wanted to share with you and maybe talk with you about are some of the tensions that we're having around the notion of criminality, right? That some of the rhetoric that we've been working with is to how do we talk about criminality, because people start talking about criminality as this is I'm not a criminal, I'm an undocumented person, but I'm not a criminal, which automatically begins to assume that there are these other criminals, right? And so we don't know quite how to handle that, because at one point, we definitely want to make sure that we're not expanding this criminality to this particular group, but at the same time, we don't want to make it reinforce the notion of criminality about other groups, right? Which brings us to the second tension that we've been having, and this has to do with race, right? Immigration has this racial component. We know that for a long time, immigrants have come into the United States. United States has been broken up in a white, black, white, generally black, white pole. They come in here, then they eventually jump over and become white, right? The Greeks, the Italians, there's a lot of experience, right? How do we work in this particular field to not reproduce that black, white pole, right? Again, another tension that we're having to think about, and that's it. So we're happy to hear your thoughts about those kinds of issues. But in the Repeal Coalition, we kind of gone back and read some of the actual abolitionist movement literature, like from the slave abolitionist movement. And what we've drawn from that particular readings and those particular ideas are a few things. And one of them is the idea that you make certain claims that you don't back down from. And that is that if you look at the abolitionist movement, when they were talking about slavery and trying to undo slavery, the abolitionist movement, those folks said, no, abolition, slavery has to end. And that's where we start. We start at that particular position. And if you can't get behind that particular position, then we're not going to be able to work with you. Because we're not going to be able to go like, okay, well, for now, I'll vote for you, but then later, maybe you'll go for abolitionists, but for now, you're going to make, slavery less hurtful, that kind of thing. So for us, we go right back to that thing and just going, no, abolitionist is about a moral stance that you take, and it's strong, and you move from that position, you move forward, right?
No compromising.
No compromises, right? Which is part of what we, as you see when we say repeal all the anti-immigration laws, we're thinking in those terms, right? Repeal all these laws. All these laws are immoral. That's our starting point, right? Now we know that we're not going to be able to repeal those laws by next January, by July 29th when the SB 1070 is going to be there. We know that that's very difficult, but the abolitionists also did not think that ending slavery was going to happen immediately, right? So the notion was, let's call for that thing that needs to happen, not for the immediate thing. Now the tension for us comes in the ones that we talked about, but the tension becomes like, okay, how do you implement that? How do you get in that? Because it's not just enough to call for something. You have to engage and work and do all sorts of things. Otherwise, it's just somebody in the corner going, hey, do this, you know, and it doesn't mean anything. And in the implementation, things become a little bit muddy, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, well, what, we want to repeal all the laws, but where do we work? How do we work? How do we engage?
How is this tangible? And how do we make this a winning thing, right? From like, because it's one big, huge thing. So how do you break it down into smaller wins, essentially, so that people can see moving towards that?
So what we've done in that respect is that we've been, of course, engaging in the grassroots, working with people, trying to say, okay, this is our aim, but we got to get some wins and we got to do some things. And what we did is we said, okay, at a certain level, we're going to do what people have described as social work. We're going to be with you when you have to go to jail. We're going to be with you with the families when they have to go try to bond people out. We're going to be with you when you're trying to get your car out of impoundment. All the stuff that I'm sure if you're doing immigration work, you've been doing as well, right? And to be with them and then begin to slowly move forward in a political manner and start making claims and doing all this kind of stuff. So the question is, how do you do this if you're non-compromising, but you're working with communities that obviously want some very simple, clear things we all know, like, hey, just stop busting me for driving without a license, right? Which is a very concrete, simple thing that people want. And how do you do this? Yes, that's the question, right? That's the question. That's the tough question, is how to keep that thing up there and keep those little things. And I'm just going to give you a very quick story of how this might work. Is that right now, what the tensions are and how difficult this is. SB 1070, of course, is possibly going to be implemented. Anybody not know what SB 1070 is? Okay. Possibly implemented on July 29th, right? And we're trying to help with a whole bunch of other people that are here and not here, trying to start some kind of non-compliance campaign of this particular situation. So we contacted a whole bunch of groups and said, we need to like figure out how to, if this thing comes into play, how not to comply to this thing, you know, how to resist it and say no as part of our larger goals. And some people said, well, I don't know, you know, we should maybe do that, because if you ask for non-compliance and there's a doctor that signs a petition and says they're not going to comply, they could lose their license, or if they're a lawyer, they may not, you know. And we were like, what? You know, we're like, okay, yeah, that's what non-compliance means, is that you might run into some problems, you know. And they said, no, we have to. So we got into this bit of a fight, an argument, and we had to just kind of go, okay, listen, we don't want to be divisive or anything, but we cannot sign a petition. We can't get behind a petition that doesn't ask somebody to not comply, right? Because then it becomes just some kind of solidarity thing, which is important, everything, but we can't. So in a respectful way, thank you very much, but we can't work. We're going to have to go in a different direction, because we cannot compromise on that. We cannot be the repeal resolution that allows some laws to be implemented, you know, or some. So we can't, you know, and that's the only way. That's unfortunately sometimes you say we can't do that because if we begin to do that, it waters down the particular situation. Now that's an example of a failure. There's also examples of connections.